your presentation, say your name.
Okay.
Okay.
You ready, Chriselle?
It's ready now.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay, we're going? Okay. My name is Chriselle Shirtliff. My topic's on childlessness. My friend Sarah was outside talking to her neighbor Janice. Sarah had told her how things were going. Then proceeded to ask her a very personal question. Do you know how these things get here? Sarah was very confused. What things? She asked. Janice responded, babies, of course. Sarah was startled. Of course I know where they come from and how they get here. Janice simply responded, then why didn't you stop? With opinions like Janice's, it's no wonder that census data have shown that childless couples have more than doubled since 1960, and they expect that number to continue to increase. The U.S. is not the only ones affected by this philosophy. Statistics from Germany also show childlessness rising. Lifetime childlessness in Western Germany has hit 30% among university-educated women and is rapidly rising among lower-class men. Many group organizations are Many of these organizations, such as the Child Free Life and Unmarried America and No Kidding, are advocating the unfairness of many policies and laws that are in place to aid people with children, while in turn trying to advocate either removing these family-friendly policies or enforcing pro-childless policies, such as removing benefits and tax write-offs for people with children and giving everyone equal benefits. But what are the effects of these pro-childless policies on communities and nations? Restricting childbearing in nations will bear innumerable consequences. In China, under the One Child Act, this policy definitely falls into the pro-childless camp and requires that couples have only one child. And they enforce that policy through mandated contraception and sterilization that would be determined by the family planning committee provided for them. Since that policy was put in place in 1979, sex-selective abortion of females and female infanticide has increased dramatically and run rampant. A new study done by the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences are projecting that by the year of 2050, there will be approximately 24 million men without a bride in China. That's the equivalent of all the males in the metropolitan areas of New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Atlanta not being able to find a woman to marry. Researchers indicate that men without children or spouses share several common characteristics, such as predominantly in the lower socioeconomic class, they will most likely be underemployed or unemployed, they will be transient, will be predisposed to risk-taking, and statistically proven they will commit proportionally more violence than non-transient males. Think about that for a moment. There will be an increase of violence, an increase in poverty, and a decrease in morals and values as a nation. What kind of society will be produced by such an outcome? A society of war and violence. Another outcry that happens because of the One Child Act is that China right now is facing an influx of old people and a decrease in young workers supporting the old. Currently, there are 6 workers to every elderly. By the year 2030, there will be 2 workers to every elderly. And eventually, they will grow out of resources to support the elderly because there are not enough workers to support them with their needs. We are facing the same crisis in the United States. As the baby boomer generations are coming to retirement, there is not enough being paid into the Social Security currently to pay for their retirement. If the policies such as the One Child Act and equal benefits for all regardless of having children go into effect, sexual bias will start occurring, a nation's strength will diminish, population levels will start going down in the millions, poverty levels will increase, and nations will see an influx of violence. If we allow pro-childless policies to come into our nation, we will see similar trends that we are currently seeing in China. On the other hand, studies show that having children have proven to bring an increase of marital cohesion, an overall increase of life fulfillment, a sense of direction, a high moral society, and a world of peace. We need to stand up against policies that will support pro-childlessness and child restrictions and give our world and nations and our children a place to live in peace and harmony. Thank you.
Okay, so now let's do our questions. So since there is so much pro-childlessness, what do you think we can do as individuals to help maybe talk to friends or people we know who do promote pro-childlessness?
I think it's important to show the statistics. You know, like we have China for a perfect example. Like right now, their child restriction policies is proving to be a destroyer for their nation. And so I think as you're discussing this with friends and families, you can say, hey, look what happens in like different countries. This is already coming to pass.
So what kind of policies are being made that are anti-child?
So right now, I listed some in my right now in the called the Child Free Life and Unmarried America, and no kidding. The policy they're trying to put through is that there's no like benefits for like or tax write-offs for people with children. In the workplace, they want what's called a cafeteria approach, where everyone gets the same benefits whether or not you have a child or not. So those are some of the things they're advocating. They're not going to law yet because their status, like their stance, doesn't make a lot of sense. But that's what they're advocating right now.
So how would that law be anti-child if everybody was getting the same benefits?
Well, it would be anti-child because, for instance, there would be no way to care for the child. Because in benefits and companies, they give maternity leave, they give benefits or tax write-offs for people with children so they can have more money for children. If you take that away, people will be spending more time in the workplace and less time with their children, and there would be no incentive to have children. It would kind of just go down.
All right, you other three need to ask a question so we can move on.
What? Sorry, say that again.
The other three need to ask a question so we can move to the next speaker. Because we have to ask a question for every presenter.
I won't lie, it cut me out. I'm up on campus. I had to drive down to Rexburg to get internet. But I missed, like I got the first three and then it kicked me out. So.
Okay.
I guess I could ask a question. Are any policies that are currently implemented in the U.S. encouraging childlessness, or anything that you've seen, like laws, policies, anything like that?
So nothing that's in the I couldn't find anything that's currently going through the government right now. But through the three organizations I'm telling you of, and also the China's one-child policy, a lot of people are trying to bring that over to the States, saying, hey, why don't you try to enforce this, especially feminists. They're really trying to push that through because they feel like, hey, this worked in China, so it should work in the U.S. as well. But it really didn't work in China. So.
Okay.
Are there any organizations that are trying to promote and educate people about the misconception that we have too much population? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that does make sense. Mm-hmm. Wait, what?
We're down to 1 minute.
Okay. So just to kind of restate it, are there any organizations trying to say that, you know, we're being overpopulated?
Are there? Because I feel like if I talk to somebody about it, they don't understand that we're actually underpopulating and that there's not going to be enough people to fulfill the job force and stuff like that and take over. So are there people who are educating?
That's a really good question. So the United Families for America, that website, they very much are. That's where I got the majority of my information about China, actually, is that they're trying really hard. They have a lot of abilities to post research papers about supporting the ability to have children. Okay, so I think is that everybody? Did everyone ask a question?
So I noticed on our evaluation that we need to be able to see your resources, everybody's resources. We just send our papers.
I think we only have to give her our resources. We don't have to give each other our resources.
Okay.
I could be.
I can't hear you anymore, Amelia.
Sorry, my computer overheated, so I
Abby.
completely missed that whole first speech. I'm so sorry.
I can hear you, Amelia, but I can't hear you, Abby. So anyway, Amelia, are you ready to start?
Yes, I am. Okay. So I chose my issue to be cohabitation, and it is actually very common, as you probably know, in our modern society. So according to Ariel Kuperberg, a professor of sociology at the Greenbrier University of North Carolina, in our modern society, 2/3 of new marriages take place between couples who have already lived together for an average of 31 months, or over 2.5 years. Another study by the National Department of Vital Statistics reports that 48% of women now move in with their mate as a first step before getting married, and only 40% of cohabiting couples are actually tied knot. So why do they choose cohabitation? There are many reasons, and most are kind of vague. Some cover financial reasons or just for convenience, but in most reasons there is an overarching theme that they fear divorce and want to use cohabitation as a way to test their relationship and give them the validation that if all goes well, they can manage living together and they still get along, that they can trust marriage to be the next step in their relationship. So just how dangerous is it? In their study, Cohabitation and Divorce in Canada, published in the National Council of Family Relations Journal of Marriage and Family Studies, David Hall and John Dowd from the University of Western Ontario reported that couples who cohabitate before marriage have a lesser level of commitment to the relationship compared to a couple who choose to not live with each other before marriage. Therefore, cohabitating couples are more willing to give up or not try as hard within the marriage, and are also less happy within their marital bond. Couples who cohabitate before marriage are twice as likely to end relationship in divorce compared to those who do not. So, now that we discussed how it affects the couple, I thought it'd be really interesting to see how it affects the child who's born into that relationship. So a recent report on fertility using the 2006-2010 National Survey of Family Growth showed that 23% of recent births among women aged 15 to 44 occurred within cohabitation, a significant increase from the 14% in 2002. Children born into unstable environments, such as a home where mother and father are not married, have been shown to suffer academically as well as socially. Furthermore, couples who choose to get married because they fall pregnant have a significantly higher divorce rate than the national average. Children deserve to grow up in a stable household where both the mother and the father are committed to each other and to their family, an environment that cohabitation just simply cannot provide. So it's kind of difficult to find laws that prohibit cohabitation. But I found that there are still 7 states that actually prohibit cohabitation, citing it as a lewd and lascivious act. These states are Florida, Michigan, Mississippi, North Carolina, North Dakota, Virginia, and West Virginia. So in these states, it is a misdemeanor punishable by a short prison term or a fine of up to $500, but it is rarely enforced. However, businesses have the right to ask potential employees about their living arrangement and deny them the job if they reveal that they're living with an unmarried partner. In Virginia, there was a woman who was running a daycare out of her home who had her license revoked because her boyfriend of 17 years was living in the home with her. Also, in states where private citizens can file misdemeanor criminal charges without triggering police investigations, people sometimes pursue cohabitation complaints against former spouses, often to gain leverage in divorce or custody disputes. As you would expect, most of these laws were passed in the 19th century and were once common in the majority of states, though most have had them repealed. So these laws are addressing the problem of cohabitation, but I do not think that they're doing much to educate the adults involved. Is it fair to be considered a sex offender for cohabitating with your partner? While I feel that cohabitation is wrong, I believe these laws to be outdated and unconstitutional. Some government programs used to have policies against it in some regards, such as the foster system. Government-managed foster agencies used to require potential foster parents to be married, but that policy has since changed in recent years, now allowing unmarried couples and single adults to take in children. Some state-run and privately owned foster agencies, however, still have this requirement. I used to work for a local privately owned foster agency that required foster parents to be married for a minimum of 2 years before they took in the child and did not accept single parents. So I find policies such as this much more appropriate than laws forbidding cohabitation. There are so many organizations that seek to improve marriage quality and success, though most who directly stand against cohabitation are rooted from a religious standpoint. In a recent study of the negative effects of cohabitation, it was shown that most young adults who cohabitate are not from religious backgrounds, and if they are, typically withdraw from religious affiliations, as most organized religions do not support cohabitation. Therefore, what I would propose is the formation of a nationwide organization that would go to high schools, colleges, community centers to teach youth and young adults about the many potential outcomes of cohabitation, basing their argument on proven facts and statistics, rather than religious reasons. They could distribute pamphlets at colleges and community centers, as well as share the message through ads on social media and public billboards, by giving their audience facts and statistics rather than scripture passages. I feel that a much larger audience will choose to listen and trust in their message. Thanks.
So my question is, the states where it's outlawed to cohabitate, do you have any idea if they have a higher or lower percentage of cohabitation in those states?
It was actually shown to be higher, shockingly enough. There was one state, I can't remember which it was, I think it was North Carolina, where the rate was like 43%, I want to say. And there was also a judge in that state who, if he had anyone come before him, even for a traffic ticket, if he asked if they were cohabitating, he wouldn't see them until they either got married or moved out. So some follow the laws, but most don't.
My question is, why do you think they don't follow? Like, why don't they follow those laws if that is a law? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those laws that it's just so common in modern society that most people just neglect the law because they don't support it, and politicians as well as the people agree. So, I don't know. I read one note that said that the reason why they don't just abolish these laws in these states is because most agencies that are against cohabitation will fight back, say that it's fighting against the family, and so they just rather just keep it as is.
I have a question. Do you think in general most of the states and most of the U.S. is for cohabitation, or are they against it in like general as you look at the broad picture?
I think most states don't really have a stance on it. I think that they kind of choose to stay out of it rather than get involved. Yeah, I don't really think that they are for or against.
What were the states again?
Florida, Michigan, Mississippi, North Carolina, North Dakota, Virginia, and West Virginia.
And they're the only ones that have a law regarding cohabitation. The other states don't have it. Yeah.
Arizona just repealed theirs, I think, in 2013.
Did they have a reason for repealing it, or?
I don't remember. I didn't really look into it.
So my question is, the states that do have it, are they actively enforcing it?
Most aren't. Most aren't. But there are still some cases like that woman who, in Virginia, who lost her license for her day home, and that judge in North Carolina. But very few enforce it.
Okay, we're at time.
Okay, so I am the next speaker. So, Mitzi, let me know when you're ready.
Okay. Go.
Okay, so one summer I worked in a hospital out in a really small village in Alaska. And it was there that I saw how serious and how common domestic violence was. I worked in the medical records department of the hospital. Women would come into the ER with internal bleeding, head trauma, and broken bones, and then tell the doctors that they fell down the stairs. We all knew that was a lie. The girls I worked with knew it was a lie because so many of them have lived that lie. I was walking home when he pulled up beside me, Elena told us. Then he started punching me in the face until I blacked out. He pulled me into his truck and raped me. He was her boyfriend. It wasn't long before she was pregnant with his child, and by the time she finally left him, she had to get a restraining order on him. Gianna came to work one day with scratches all over her face. I asked her what happened. With pain in her eyes, she told me that she found out her boyfriend cheated again. She confronted him, and he beat her up. Last time he promised that he would never do this again, but still it happened. Unfortunately, these are not uncommon stories. There are many more similar and many more worse. I have heard too many stories. I have shed too many tears for friends and loved ones who have been abused. I know I'm not the only one. I bet many of you have at least known one person who has gone through this, if it was not you yourself. This is a very serious problem. According to a 2010 research done by the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, 1 in 3 women are physically abused by an intimate partner. We all need to be educated on how we can help personally and know what our community and government programs are that are at the tip of our fingers and how they can help. The United States Department of Justice has an entire department that deals with the safety of abused women and children. While I don't want to say these are the only victims, it is far more common for women to be abused than men. The Office of Violence Against Women has numerous grant programs that are currently in place to help protect women. One of the formula grant programs is called Stop Violence Against Women. In this, they award states that enhance law enforcement, protection against the abused, and they have more services for abused women. In every city that I've ever lived in, there has been some sort of shelter or home for abused women. When I moved into the complex I'm currently living in, I noticed that there was a magnet on the door that had numbers for the police department, the fire department, poison control, etc. But they also have the number to call in cases of abuse where you can get immediate help. I thought this was an amazing thing that they had in every apartment. But it's not always the number, if you don't know the number for the sheltering, you should find it. Even if you are never the victim, you don't know when a victim is your friend or your neighbor and they need your help. One last program I'd like to mention is the RAD class. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it, but I took it for my women's health class. And RAD stands for Rape, Aggression, and Defense. In this, they teach you how to protect yourself in multiple situations. This class is only $5 and it's nationwide, and it's a one-time fee. So if you take it anywhere, you can take it in any other state and you won't have to pay again for it. By knowing how to protect herself in a moment of attack, a woman can help save her own life. We can help end domestic violence by preparing our communities to act in time of need. But more importantly, we can equip the women with knowledge that they are strong enough. We need to protect women in our societies so there are less stories like Eleanor's and Jana's, and less victims in the ER having to lie about the injuries and because they are afraid of their life. Or for their life. Okay, I'm done.
Good job, right under 5. I'd like to ask the first question of how do we help women feel secure in reporting the violence and abuse that they get? That seems to be the biggest problem.
Mm-hmm. When I was in the hospital, we weren't allowed to report it unless they told us to, because we can't report it and have the police show up at the house, because if they're not going to leave the man, then they're just going to get beat up again as soon as the police come. And so, honestly, you have to kind of just talk to them and be a friend. And, if it's really if you're afraid for their life, then yes, you have to call the police, but you have to talk to them about how to get out of it and let them know that they don't have to be in that.
So just to be clear, also this is my question. So as an outsider, like say I'm witnessing, and this is true, I'm witnessing my cousin being abused. What can I do? Like, because I don't know if I can turn them in, you know, like you were just talking about. So what can I do?
You can. I would report it, but I would mostly I would just be a friend to her and be there to listen to her, because so often these women are afraid, and they feel like they can't talk to anyone about it. And so when they are ready, you have to be willing and ready to take the steps to get them out of that situation. Whereas if she's not ready to get out of it, you can't get her out.
Mine kind of goes along the same thing, and you kind of already answered it. But it was more of like, how do you approach and say something? Do you just only say, hey, I think this is going on. Tell me about it, or what do you think is the best way to approach someone that is, instead of just waiting for them to just say something, because that may take who knows how long, maybe too late.
I think you kind of have to mostly. I'm not an expert on this, you know, but I would be like, hey, I noticed this, you know, what's going on? Let's talk about it. How can I help you? And maybe don't go up and say, hey, I'm going to do this, this, and this to help you, but say, here, what can I do? I'm here to help you. I love you. What can I do?
So you mentioned, oh, sorry.
It's okay. You can go first.
mentioned a program that people can do. What exactly do they learn in that program, or what are they doing in that program? Exactly.
So I took the RAD class as extra credit in my women's health class. And so what they did was they kind of just taught us moves. You know, if a man comes up to you in a parking lot and grabs your wrist, this is how you're going to get out. If he comes up and puts you in a bear hug, this is how you're going to get out. And it's not teaching you to be like a karate ninja that you can beat him up and win, but all you're doing is you're getting out of the situation. And so it just teaches you, you know, what maneuvers to do to get out of his grip and out of his control so that you can run away and get help.
So what kind of services are publicly available for women who escape abuse?
There are shelters pretty much in every city, and I know there are a lot of places that there's numbers you can call and they will pick you up and then take you to the shelter. And the Stop Violence Against Women and Children, that grant, they provide a lot of money to these shelters so that they can feed the women and have a place for them to stay and help them get back on their feet. All right, did everyone ask? Carly, did you ask a question? Do you have one?
I was just thinking about as far as like the length of programs that are available to women. Are there any longer term programs for women who struggle with domestic abuse, or are they relatively short until they can get up on there?
I would imagine, I don't know for sure if there's, but I would imagine that there are places that you could stay for several months. I doubt that they have like okay, it's been a week and you don't have anywhere to go, so you better just go back to your boyfriend or husband. I don't think they're like that. I think they work with women probably a lot to make sure that they do have somewhere safe to be no matter how long it is. So, okay, well, I think everybody got their question in. So we can move on to Victoria. You're next.
Okay.
Be sure to state your names at the beginning of your talk.
Okay, so I'm Victoria Osterly, and I talked about public education system. A judge took partial control over the Kansas City, Missouri school district on the grounds that it was unconstitutionally segregated district with lacking facilities and students that perform poorly. In an effort to fix it, the judge ordered that state and districts spend nearly $2 billion over the next 12 years. This was to build new schools, integrate classrooms, and bring student test scores up to national norms. According to popular belief, more money from the government should have helped solve the problem. But 5 years later, there was little to show for the money spent. except for the best school facilities in the country. Student achievement hadn't improved at all and had actually decreased. Money never was the issue in Kansas City. It was 2009 and I was a part of our all-girls show choir. I really wanted to be a part of the mixed show choir because it was supposed to be considered the top choir at our school. We were at a show choir competition together, and since it was a smaller competition, the all-girls choir and the mixed choirs were judged in the same category. This was the last time our school ever attended a choir competition set up this way. This is because our all-girls choir beat the mixed choir, which was unheard of since they were supposed to be the best. So why did this happen? Well, it turned out that the director of the mixed choir had picked girls from auditions that he either found attractive or had previous inappropriate friendships with. It was not set up that the top singers got into the top school, but the most attractive got into the top choir. As this news started unfolding and it was exposed to the public, parents and students were rightfully vivid. The school district understood and attempted to fire him, but because he was a part of the union and was protected by the rigid contracts, they weren't able to fire him. Instead, they had to move him to the elementary school, where he is now teaching 3rd and 5th and 4th grade music. My school is not the only school that has had to deal with not being able to fire teachers due to the union involvement. Furthermore, teachers that are good at their job are considered exceptional are getting paid the same as teachers that are only there for the benefits. I am not proposing that all teachers part of the union are the problem. There are many that I would call heroes, but there are also teachers that do not care for their students. A student from South Carolina is 18 but reading at a 4th grade reading level. He has a desire to read and improve, but the school system has failed him. When they met with the principal and teachers, they seemed to think that he was doing well and didn't have any concerns. In hopes to help him, his mom took him to a private learning center. It only took him 72 hours to improve his level by two grade levels, something that the public school system had failed to help him with for years. Unfortunately, this is not something that everyone has the luxury to do. As I said before, money is not the solution, but I believe better teachers who are held accountable for caring about their students' success is the answer. Administrators who are actively engaged in knowing what is happening in their schools are the answer. If they are not doing their jobs, then the school district should have the right to fire them. I had a teacher in high school who took the time to care for his students. He taught science, something I had never done well at. He recognized my distaste in the subject and asked what he could do to help me to enjoy learning. I had only taken science classes that were full of lectures and note-taking, and expressed how I felt. I had never had the opportunity to find a reason to like it. The whole semester, he not only built a relationship with me where I could ask him for help, but also gave me reasons to look forward to attending classes. He incorporated into his class activities that all of his students were excited about. He learned with us and was a role model to us and what learning could be like. He was my hero that year, and we stayed in contact to this day because he cared about his students' future. Teachers play a huge role in the students' learning and growing while they are attending school. A study done in 2010 showed that the most powerful socializing agent in schools are the teachers. They are daily role models to our children of learning and behavior. Another study done in 1963, done on role models, showed that the models who are rewarding, prestigeful, or competent, who possess high status, and who have control over rewarding resources are more readily imitated than are models who lack these qualities. If our students are picking up the behaviors and attitudes modeled by teachers, we need to be placing the best teachers in our school system. In order to have good teachers, we need good teaching programs that give them background in education and psychology. And once again, if they are not meeting the standards needed, our schools should have the right to fire them based on the well-being of our children's future. The No Child Left Behind Act is a federal program that refers to making schools and teachers responsible for students' learning of achievement outcomes. It requires annual testing in all states. This program is focused on addressing the symptoms of our lacking school system by standardizing learning rather than addressing the real issues. The government should have less power, and we should give the teaching power back to the school system. Our society should focus less on what we need more money for because we are looking at learning wrong. We should ensure our children have the best teachers and role models possible, even if that means taking the union out of the picture. And that's it.
I'll start the question answer. What do you think more of like parents? What can they do?
Well, I think parents just need as well to take responsibility for ensuring that their children have teachers that care about their futures. I think the more actively engaged they are in the children's learning, the better they'll do in school.
So what do you think, along those same lines, what do you think parents could have done to that high school teacher who kind of was having inappropriate relationships with students?
Well, I think if they had been more involved and had recognized that the teacher was having inappropriate relationships, I think that they could have stopped it happening before it happened, because nobody knew what was going on, and I think it was just the lack of involvement. That they just trusted that the teacher knew what he was doing and that they trusted his intentions. But I think as a parent, going into the public school system, we shouldn't just trust them. We should really make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
We had a similar situation in our elementary school, and the same thing happened. They just moved him back, and he actually ended up moving back to our school a few years later. So my question is, how do we propose that we really hold teachers accountable for their teaching? How do we measure their accountability?
Well, I think
their performance, rather.
I think because of being a part of the union, it's monopolized it and made it so that the teachers have the power. And I think if we were to remove the union, which I know would be a big task, but create schools not based around unions, public schools, then I think teachers would have to perform better, because if they didn't perform better and there were complaints and stuff like that, then they could just get fired versus being protected by the contracts that they have. So I think that's how they would be held accountable, is if they didn't do a good job, then they would be gone.
So based on kind of like that same train of thought with the unions, do you think tenure is flawed with teachers?
Isn't tenure just with like college, universities?
Mm-hmm.
No.
I guess I don't know enough about it then.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't know enough about that to answer that question.
Okay.
Do you think that there should be programs or trainings in place to help teachers get better, or is there like a line that, you know, that we're like, sorry, you just don't have it, you have to go?
No, I think absolutely. If the teacher is willing to recognize that they need to improve, and I think absolutely that they should implement programs that could help them be better. I mean, our learning is always changing, and we're always getting new knowledge. So I think continuing education for teachers would be beneficial, so they don't get stuck in ruts and stuff like that.
So one of the purposes of unions originally was to protect the workers and make sure that they get compensated properly and receive the benefits that they deserve. How do you propose, if you get rid of unions, actually having this happen?
Well, there are schools that successfully do it, like charter schools and stuff like that, where they aren't off of unions, and they actually have better benefits based off of their ability to teach how they think that they should teach. And I mean, I don't know, there are schools that successfully do it, so I feel like we should be able to implement it in our public school system so that we can have the benefits that they have in charter schools and stuff like that.
How do you suggest that we reward teachers who are doing well? How can we keep them motivated to keep being stellar teachers?
So, like I mentioned, people who do well, teachers that do well, often are getting paid the same as teachers who are not doing well, who aren't taking the initiative. And so I think if they aren't based on that salary given to us by the union, then they have the opportunity to give their teachers raises based off of if they're doing well and stuff like that. So I think money would be an incentive. I think that's what I meant to say. Yep.
Good. Thank you, Victoria. Chantel, you are up next.
Okay.
All right. I'm Chantel Howard, and in The Family, A Proclamation to the World, it says, quote, "Parents have a sacred duty to rear their children in love and righteousness, to provide for their physical and spiritual needs, and to teach them to love and serve one another, observe the commandments of God, and be law-abiding citizens wherever they live," end quote. In order for parents to teach their children these things, it's going to take time spent with their child or together as a family. Today I'm going to inform you about the importance of family time. A study was done by W.R. Maddox that compared the average hours per week that parents spent with their children. In 1965, parents spent an average of 30 hours per week with their children, and in 1985, it dropped to only 17 hours per week. Now, this was still 30 years ago, so imagine how many more hours it probably has dropped due to the increase of financial responsibility that parents face and an increase in technology that's come into our lives. Growing up, my siblings and I were involved in many extracurricular activities, which took us from place to place and leaving us less time to spend as a family. My father was also working long hours to provide for our family and to provide money to do these various activities. My mother was also frantic, trying to run us around and trying to juggle all of our schedules. Because of this, there were many days when we ate dinner when we had the chance to. According to the Heritage Foundation, teens who had family dinner less than 2 nights a week were twice as likely to get involved in some sort of substance abuse. Luckily, this wasn't the case for my family, but it happens to many. There were many times when my mother has told me and my siblings since these experiences that she wished she would have spent more time with us individually and as well as a family. This may be the case for many parents out there, since statistics show that 50% of parents feel like they don't spend enough time with their children. Although there are many laws about the importance of spending time as a family, there are some programs out there that help to relieve the burdens that parents face so they can spend more quality time with their families. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of the national program called WIC. It stands for Women, Infants, and Children. This is one program that I'm going to talk about. This program is part of the United States Department of Agricultural, Food, and Nutrition Services. It is a program that helps to provide nutritional assistance to pregnant women, infants, and children up to the age of 5. A good portion of a family's income goes towards your food. According to their website, within the average month, WIC has helped only 63.1% of people that are actually eligible for their services. This means there's still plenty of services out there for people who are eligible that are not getting used. When people use a resource like this, it allows them to have a little more financial assistance, so it can help parents be able to not have to work as long, and spend that little bit of added time with their family. Now, some of you may say that this may undermine a parent's responsibility for having to provide for their family, and I can say from my experience with working with many families that use this program, with my experience in working in a daycare, that yes, sometimes this is the case. People sometimes abuse the system and resources that are available to them. However, there are many, many young parents and mothers who can benefit from this program's assistance. So it allows them time to learn to shop around, be frugal, to teach their children, and ultimately to be able to spend that added time with their families. Therefore, I conclude that we all try our best to make time for our families, even if that means working a little less or humbling ourselves enough to accept assistance from family, friends, neighbors, the community, and even programs that are available to us. I suggest that we try to learn more about resources that are available and to even help create resources that allow families to spend more time with their families. I also suggest we follow the sound advice from Dallin H. Oaks that says, quote, the amount of children and parent time absorbed in good activities of private lessons, team sports, and other school and club activities also need to be carefully regulated. Otherwise, children will be overscheduled and parents will be frazzled and frustrated. Parents should act to preserve time for family, an individual one-on-one time that binds the family together and fixes children's values on things of eternal worth. End quote. Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So, do you think that, like, we as a people could come up with policies or anything like that that could enhance family time?
I think one that I tried to look for more specific laws on was the time to work. And what I was looking was like a 40-hour work week, which it's not too bad. But sometimes those that have the overtime, you can go up to 80 hours a week in overtime, and that's a lot of time, and that's a lot of time away from your family, whether it's your own children or even your parents and your siblings, depending upon your age and your circumstance. So I think laws helping with the amount of time you can work and be out that way can also help.
I don't. I'm wondering if you think that this is a problem that needs to be solved on a community level, a national level, or if this needs to be solved more on an individual level in the homes, a change of attitude.
I think it can apply to all of them. Like I think the majority of it takes time in your own family and your own individual circumstances. But I also think that the other resources can help you to be able to provide that little bit of time. Whether it's laws allowing maybe some more financial assistance so both parents don't have to be out of the home, or like community help in maybe like various activities that they can go to that are free or that just allow the family to be together.
Do you think that businesses are kind of moving away towards family time and having their employees work more, or do you think that companies are kind of starting to realize that family time is important?
I feel like it's kind of a mix. Like I know for my husband's work, he works a lot of overtime, and it's hard that way. But there's also, I just read something in the news a few days ago about a company that was letting parents have like a year's worth of maternity leave, and I think that's also a great resource. Like I think it's kind of going both ways. I hope it goes more towards businesses allowing families to spend more time together instead of at work.
Along those same lines, do you think it's an obligation for the private sector to give additional funding or additional time to those parents who feel that they need it or request it for time spent with their family?
Okay, sorry, repeat it. I couldn't hear.
It's okay. Do you think it's like an obligation, almost do you think the private sector has an obligation to make time for families and their businesses so they make time for their employees to spend time for their family?
Yeah, I think it's an obligation almost, because to be honest, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your family. You wouldn't be in the position where whether they've had a negative impact on you and it's turned you for the better, or whether they've been great the whole time and they've put you in the situation you're at. Does that answer your question?
We have 1 minute.
Do you think that companies should allow more paternal leave when a new baby is born for the dad?
I think so. I think it's a benefit for both the child and also the mother. The mother's worn out all the time. I haven't had a child, but I've seen many people, and it's just hard. It's a big adjustment, and but I think it also gives that, because kind of like a mom and a child, they almost have that little special bond already since the child's in her womb. But for the dad, it just that added time would allow him to have more special bonding with his child as well.
Time.
Okay, thanks, Chantel. So, Mitzi, you're up next. Do you have someone timing for you?
Yeah, I'll set the timer.
Okay.
Somebody else. All right, I'm Mitzi Busaith, and my topic is where does progress begin? When my oldest daughter was in 6th grade, I attended a parent-teacher conference. The teacher was full of praise and admiration. She mentioned how quickly my daughter completed her classwork and was eager to help others finish. She also said that her daughter tested highest. She also said that my daughter tested highest in the class in all the achievement exams. I was feeling pretty good. Then she added, well, she doesn't know her multiplication tables very well, but that's all right. She is so cute. I was horrified. My daughter can ace the state exam, but doesn't need to know how to multiply simple numbers. Is this progress in education? Since the 1980s, our nation has been creating legislation, developing programs, and offering financial incentives to states and schools in an attempt to improve the level of the education of our children. In 2001, the No Child Left Behind Act was established, requiring each state to develop its own standard of achievement and measuring each child's performance against that standard. In 2009, it was the Race to the Top initiative, offering financial benefits to schools that upped the quality and expectations of their curriculum. In 2013, in his State of the Union address, President Obama proposed that every child in the country should have access to high-quality preschools. This, he said, would improve the performance of the children as they progress through the public school system. To date, none of these programs have been the silver bullet that has elevated our youth's performance in school. It seems the primary results of these programs are the need to develop more programs. Perhaps in addressing the decline of the education level of our students, we should look beyond the classroom. After conducting an extensive study that involved over 20,000 students, Lawrence Steinberg concluded, today's students know less and can do less than their counterparts could 25 years ago. This is not because the children are less intelligent, but that there is a widespread decline in children's interest in education and in their motivation to achieve in the classroom. It is a problem of attitude, effort, not ability. This problem cannot be fixed at school.
Steinberg's findings suggested that the student's achievement is due more to the conditions of students' lives outside of the classroom, particularly in their homes. Children's attitudes about education are learned from their parents at a very early age. A child's success in school and society is closely connected to his parents' attitude about education and their style of parenting. The authoritative style of parenting has long been credited as the most effective method of raising capable children. This method provides boundaries or guidance, acceptance or love, and age-appropriate autonomy. The family is the most powerful and the most humane and by far the most economical system known for building competence and character in children and adults alike. A solid body of evidence shows the valuable role family plays in promoting academic achievement, economic success, and social competence. The list of benefits goes on, including preventing aggressive behavior, associating with deviant peers, delinquency, early sexual debut, and substance abuse. This is a long list of desirable outcomes that originate within the family, not the schoolroom or high-quality preschools. Schools are a wonderful place to gain knowledge and develop skills, but not all of life's lessons come from the textbook. Important skills are learned within the family structure, like sharing, cooperating, helping. It is a time that we recognize the value of parents in the lives of our children, their education, and their ability to succeed and contribute to society. The work that needs to be done in our homes with parents and children working together. We can encourage this process by creating and funding programs that will support parents in the business of raising their children. Good parenting is a skill. Established resources and educational forums to help teach and educate parents will be an investment with a high return. Parents need to spend more time with their children, especially at the crossroads of their day. In a nationally representative poll, 21% of teens listed one of their top concerns was not having enough time with their parents, which is very interesting. Learning parenting skills and taking the time to parent will open up opportunities for parents to educate their children in topics other than reading, writing, and arithmetic. The result will bring better adjusted children with more ability to succeed in society. Parents play the primary role in a child's development. As a state, we need to ensure that they have the opportunity to raise healthy, productive children through educational programs that will give them the tools they need. The success of a society relies on the successful development of each new generation. Any questions?
That was really good. I really liked it. I have a question. So I really liked the study done on 21,000 students.
Yes.
That couldn't do more or less than students 25 years ago. And it was because there was a lack of interest in achievement. So do you think, how do you think a parent can install that into a child?
Well, a lot of his research showed that the interest of children came from watching their parents read, from discussions, from encouraging them at school, being involved, not so much as being involved in their homework, but being involved in what they're learning, being interested in what they're learning, and providing them those opportunities.
How do you think, regardless of what's going on at home, teachers can help inspire students to learn more?
Well, there's always that wonderful teacher that somehow finds the time, and I don't know how, with all of the paperwork that is involved now in school. But you know, a teacher can be a great mentor too, but I don't think a teacher can ever fully take the place of what the children learn. They may inspire you in science or in some particular topic, may even give you some confidence, but the really important elements and things that you learn need to be learned at home in that social environment.
You mentioned that we should have some educational courses to help teach parents these skills. So what do you think would be, how do you think we could do this when, I mean, parents are having hard enough time being with their families?
Absolutely. I think that's a good question, a good point. I've actually been trying to design a program that we can do in our ward, which would be having a family conference, kind of like an EFY, but it's for the whole family, so that the whole family comes together and is involved in the learning process of the classes. I know that sounds really idealistic, but I'm hoping we can do it. But I also think that, you know, information could be shared at PTA meetings. There are just a lot of community ways that even a pamphlet, you know, you can send out information in a lot of ways, I think. Maybe even parent-focused activities at school, right?
So if a parent isn't fairly active in a child's life, how do you motivate that parent? Because I know the parents are in charge of motivating kids, but how do you get parents to want to be participants in their children's life?
I think that that's a really tough thing, and I think that that's what we're seeing a lot in our generation, with where the parents' desires are so individualistically motivated. I think that parents, people that love parenting and are advocates of parenting, should promote parenting and talk about how parenting is great, and that in your conversations with other women or other families, talk about parenting techniques. I think that your generation is the product of my generation, which was a rather selfish generation, and I don't think that I don't know that there have been role models. I would love to see the media change their attitude toward families, because it's a very powerful resource. And you know, if we had June Cleaver back there again, we might have people that loved being homemakers, and they taught their kids values.
My question is, so you talked about the different parenting styles. Like in your own life, have you had to adjust kind of how you teach the importance of education, like to your children, with different styles per child?
You know, I have not found a difference in parenting styles, because that's really principle based on having respect for your child, recognizing what they can do, but and what boundaries they can have. But definitely, each child is different in what motivates them and excites them. So I think you need to know the temperament of your child and to help them. But you know, one of the best things I think is for children to see their fathers read for leisure. When a father sits down and reads, that is more valuable than anything else. If he reads to the children, that also is extremely valuable in their educational development. So let's get rid of the electronic devices and start reading to our kids.
So if they have issues getting parents involved and taking that role on that they should as a role model, what can teachers do to kind of rope parents into that? I mean, give them, like, such a hard
Like,
time.
give them homework assignments. I think that's a great concept, actually, to require reading, that you have to sit down with your child and read. You know, that if the homework, especially in the early grades, when homework is such a silly thing to have anyway, if it was actually time that you were spending with the child, reading, spelling, quizzing, playing word games, playing dice games, you know, where you're adding, just that time of interacting with your children, I think that would help. That was a great question. I hadn't thought of that.
Thank you, Mitzi. You did really good. That was awesome. I think everyone's got their question in. So, Carly, you are the last person to go. So, Mitzi will let you know when she's got her time ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
So my name is Carly Lish, and the topic I'm talking about is uninvolved parenting and its effect on children. So growing up, my family was what I considered to be a normal family, or what I thought was normal. I had a dad who went to work, a mom who stayed home with us, and a couple brothers and sisters. And that's how I thought every family worked. So I grew up in a happy home with parents who encouraged reading, writing, math, exploration, and I always had a parent at home or nearby when I needed them. But in the 6th grade, I met a girl named Erica, and Erica and I became pretty good friends, and she would start to come over to my house after school because we lived in the same neighborhood. One day, we decided to go over to Erica's house so I could see a new CD that she had purchased. As we walked into the house, I noticed that no one was home, so I asked her where her parents were. She quickly explained that her parents were divorced, that her mom was at work, and she wouldn't be home until about 7. She explained that she actually really liked having the house to herself. She was able to watch whatever she wanted on TV and eat whatever she wanted from the pantry and listen to any radio station she wanted to. And I agreed that this was cool, but at the same time I felt a little bit sad that she was missing out on having someone in the home waiting for her to get home, asking her how her day was, helping her out with whatever she needed to. And as I became a teenager, I realized when she said she had the ability to do whatever she wanted, what that actually meant. But as I've grown up, I've started to see that, in fact, my family is not the norm. In 2014, the number of children born to unwed mothers was 1,595,873 children. This means that out of all of the live births that occurred in 2014, 40% were to unwed women. Out of these children born to unwed women, only 55% had 2 parents in the home. The other 35% were brought into single-parent households. In 2015, the government's Bureau of Labor Statistics released a report on the employment status in homes with children. In the homes with single mothers, there was a 69.4% employment rate, and in a home with single fathers, an 81.9% employment rate. Last year, the share of married couples with children where both parents worked in the home was 60.2%. Many of the employed parents in these studies had jobs with rigid hours and a low likelihood of receiving extensive time off. Other jobs had required nighttime shifts or ever-changing shifts, which made it difficult for parents to schedule time with their children. Even mothers who had just had a newborn child had just a little bit of time they could spend with that child before they were expected to return to their jobs. These high expectations and hours for work took away from the home and made it difficult for parents to actually be there to parent. Now, I'm not suggesting that work is bad. Work is good. It's helping pay for their children's future. But most of the time, work makes it difficult for parents to be involved in their children's lives. Children eventually age out of childcare that can be used in their earlier years and become youth. They become juveniles. And the rates of juvenile delinquents that come from single-parent households or households with uninvolved parents are staggering. When a parent is not at home, when the teens are, that's when the trouble starts. Many young adults decide that they want to be accepted into the teen culture, and because they have no adult supervision or guidance, they have the time and the place to take part in these negative activities. 61.6% of all seniors in high school said that they've lost their virginity, many of them admitting that it happened after school in their homes while their parents were at work. There are similar numbers found when looking at drug use and drinking. In a study done in 1998, 6,400 boys were followed over a time span of 20 years. These young men grew up without their biological fathers in the home and were roughly 3 times more likely to commit a crime that led to incarceration. In addition to struggling socially and with the law, children with uninvolved parents tend to struggle in education. Children with functioning families tend to do better in math and science, are more likely to go to college than others, and know what is expected of them academically. So what can we do to provide a parent's presence in the home? How can we have parents become more involved in their children's lives? There have been attempts to pass legislation and advocating for healthier marriages to promote happier homes and happier children. In 2004, the Bush administration began a Healthy Marriage Initiative to help increase happy homes. This also increased the likelihood of one parent being at home with their children when they get home from school and decreased the poverty rate. And while these were all great initiatives, none of them really quite took. And I don't believe that they ever will take in this ever-changing culture of working households. So with this realization, we can conclude that we need to advocate for something a little different. We can support more flexible hours and arrangements for parents. We can advocate for better access to childcare, especially in homes with low income. And most importantly, we can advocate for parent training classes. These classes can help in many different aspects of children's and parents' lives. They can find occupational training in order to get a better job. They can take classes on communication and support, and that will help try and find what will support their own children and families in the future. These are the things that will improve a child's life, but only if the parent is willing to cooperate and change. In an interview I was able to attend with a group of juvenile delinquents from St. Anthony, the question was asked to these young men if their parents had been involved in their lives, do they think they would be where they were? Immediately, one of the young men answered simply, "We wouldn't be here." It might take initiative and time, but we can change the foundations of families, and that will change the future of the world. Thank you. Any questions?
So I'm in a psychology class, and the other day we were kind of talking about this and what parents should do if they can't be home when the children get home. And so the teacher said that one of the most effective ways or things to do was to have set phone calls, and this you would have to have a landline. That way they would be at home, and you would say, you call me the moment you get off the bus, or especially if it's younger children, and then I call you at this time, and that way you know that they're home. And she said you also have to have a list of chores. That way, often they will hold off and do chores at the very end, so they'll watch TV and they'll just be at home hanging out. So what do you think? Do you think that these things would work at an older age, or do you think that it has to change, or what we could do?
I think if you start implementing those practices at an earlier age for children, then it will be successful because they know what's expected of them or not. But if you try and start it as soon as they hit the teen years, I don't know how successful it might be, especially feeling like you're unsupervised. My friend Erica later, her mom never set rules, but as soon as she hit 15 and got her permit, her mom would ask her to go do jobs around or pick up stuff for her, and she wouldn't do it. And it's just because she thought, my mom's never expected anything of me before, so why should I start now? But I think that if you do implement those early on, then yes, you can create a habit of it, and it will benefit your child.
I think you just kind of answered my question, but I was just going to ask, how can we inspire kids to make good choices even when there isn't someone watching them or home with them? But
yeah, I think it is just parenting from a young age, letting your child know that there are expectations for them, that they need to be doing something, they need to be progressing in a better way. Because I know that, even when you hit that age where you finally realize your parents really can't make you do anything, you have those morals instilled in you. You know right from wrong. You know that there's something better you could be doing with yourself.
Okay, let's say now we have this generation of kids that are being raised by parents that are working, and the parents themselves never had to work at home. They were never given responsibilities. Somehow we need to break that cycle. Is there anything that we could do through the public school system to help break that cycle in parenting? I know back when my kids were in school, they used to carry baby dolls around with them for a week, that cried and did all that good stuff. Do you think that we could do any intervention we could do at that level?
I do think that the education system kind of has an advantage because the majority of parents want their children to succeed in school. So if the school can send home interactive projects, like you said, reading with their children, the baby doll is a good example, anything where the parent will have the opportunity to step up and help, that might allow them to become more involved in their children's lives through those little projects.
So, do you think that there's some parents that are uninvolved just by choice versus necessity? And what do you suggest? What policies and laws and stuff can be implemented to help them, encourage them to spend more family time?
So again, with the juvenile delinquents, I've been working a lot with them this semester in my class, and a lot of them are talking about how their parents were uninvolved because they never grew up. This one kid said that his mom wanted to go party with him all the time, but when it came to like homework, school, like laying down the law, she was never there. And so he said one of the biggest helps to him before he went to juvie was a program run through the schools where they had a mentor come in from the high school and hang out with kids after school. They would be stuck at, elementary school as a form of childcare, but they would come in and mentor. So I think mentoring projects might actually be really remarkably helpful with children whose parents aren't involved. Getting people like an older person, the brothers, have you heard of older brothers, older sisters, coming in and just explaining to them their point of view, their their world view, and being that parental figure that they might need in their life at that time.
So from a child's point of view, how do you, if your parent's not home, how do you think it's best to bring up that you want to have your parent home?
That's hard.
Especially when you're a teenager.
Yeah, because you might not even want to admit it at that point. But I don't know. It just all stems from open communication between mother, father, parent, child, like the parents and the children. So if you have an open form of communication, then your child will feel comfortable saying, hey, I want you at home more. And I think parents also need to be aware that their child might need them home and ask. Just be willing to ask if their child wants them.
All right, we're time.
Okay, thank you everybody for having your speeches.
Great.
Yeah, it was really good.
I learned so much. I've taken away so much. Thank you so much, all of you, for the hard work and research. It's been good. Thanks for getting us going, Abby.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast now.